How is designing Airbnbs is different from normal residential homes?
So the first thing is the location, the second thing is the material that you're using, and the third thing is the psychology of the person who's using the space. So
How do you evaluate the tourism potential for a site?
selection for an Airbnb is basically the city that you're located in. So what is the city known for?
How do you translate the client's vision into architectural concept? How do you determine the number of rooms or amenities or layout for an Airbnb property?
Depending on what purpose the Airbnb is going to be used for, we will suggest the amenities that can be given, the type of architecture that you will be doing.
So how important is to show 3D models or walkthrough before starting the construction to the clients?
It's a very critical stage where the clients also give us a lot of inputs.
As an architect, how do you estimate the budget for the Airbnb in the designing phase?
We create something called a BOQ, that is a bill of quantities, right? It will have the specification of the material.
How do you choose the right builders or contractors for your project?
We call the contractor, we create a set of drawings called the tender drawings. We explain all the drawings.
So how do you choose the materials that balance aesthetic appeal, sustainability as well as cost effective for the interior design?
When we are doing the 3D model itself, we kind of show you the type of material that we are going to use.
What do you check in the final inspection before you handed the project to the client? So hi everyone. So for this podcast, I brought you an architect who specializes in designing Airbnbs and vacational homes. He helps in transforming properties into unique guest experiences by thoughtful planning and designing. So the guest for today's podcast is Gautham Chelvakumar sir, where he has 10 years of experience in architecture, and also he was running his own design studio which is called Studio Meld. So in this podcast we will find out how an Airbnb has been created from site selection to completion. So if you are someone who are planning to purchase Airbnbs, or if you are someone who are buying Airbnbs, make sure you watch this entire podcast. So without any further ado, let's get started. So hi Gautham sir, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you Joshua. Thank you for inviting me to the podcast. I'm good Joshua, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good too. How is your weekend sir?
The weekend's going good. Yeah, so it's always better to do something more productive and during the weekend rather than so I'm enjoying my weekend right now.
Okay. Nice. So like how is your studio going? Like the projects and stuff?
Yeah, so we are doing a handful of projects right now. So it's going. Different projects are in different stages, which is good. And yeah, we are doing. We are hitting the targets that we had set for this year actually.
Okay. That's good to hear, sir. Sir, we will start this podcast with your introduction. So can you briefly introduce about yourself to our audience?
Yeah, hi. I am architect Gautham Chelvakumar. I'm the co-founder of Studio Meld. We specialize in designing Airbnbs for vacation homes and farmhouses. So and we have I have about 10 years of experience, and so does my co-founder. And the firm is about 3 years old now.
So sir, like finally your interest has been developed in designing Airbnbs as well as farmhouses. So if you look into normal construction, majority of the people who build residential homes, they stay for like long period, like they stay for their lifetime as well. So if you look into Airbnbs, the guest will stay a day or 2 days or at max 1 week and they will vacate. So how is designing Airbnbs is different from normal residential homes?
Okay, so that's actually a very good question, right? So the main difference is the turnover. Like you said, it's a short-term rental, right? So people stay there for a few days and then keep vacating it. So the wear and tear is also high. So the first thing is obviously the location matters, because it's if it's a personal home, it's more of a emotional decision, right? You end up taking an emotional call to buy the particular apartment. right? But here you have to think about the economics basically. So the first thing is the location. The second thing is the material that you're using, right? So it has to take the wear and tear of so many different people using it from in shorter periods of time. And the third thing is the psychology of the person who's using the space. So it should not be confusing, right? Like when you enter, you should know where to keep your suitcases, where to leave your footwear, without somebody else telling you or giving you directions for every single thing. It should be a frictionless space. So that is what we do during the planning stage. The next thing is privacy. So the Airbnb is going to be used for different purposes, right? So sometimes there might be just a single family using it. Sometimes it'll be a group of friends, and there might be two families using the space. So in those cases, you should think about the privacy and the acoustics of the space as well. So when somebody is trying to put their baby to sleep in one of the rooms, it should not be so loud that when people are enjoying outside, it should not be so loud that it wakes up the baby during the stay. So those kind of things is what we take care of, which is a little different from a normal residential.
So, sir, now we will talk about the site selection. So, the first step for building a new Airbnb is the site selection only. So, as you said in this question only, if we generate good amount of profit in Airbnb, so we have to choose in a proper location. So, let us assume we are building a new Airbnb for this podcast. So, the first step is we have to do the site selection. So, how do you evaluate the tourism potential for a site before starting the planning for the Airbnb?
Yes. So the site selection for Airbnb and farmhouses are a little different. So the main thing in selection for an Airbnb is basically the city that you're located in, right? So what is the city known for? For example, if you are choosing a site for an Airbnb or an apartment that you want to convert to an Airbnb in Vizag, the main reason anybody would travel to the city is for the sightseeing, right? So they want to go enjoy the beaches and they want to basically come there for leisure activities, right? What we suggest is basically getting a property that is closer to the beach, or need not have the beach view or anything like that, but at least a walkable distance from the beach, right? So those kind of properties tend to do a little better, because when people are searching for the property on a platform like Airbnb, they'll be looking at the distance from the beach and distance from the tourist attractions, right? So, but for the same Airbnb, if it is going to happen somewhere in, let's say, a city like Hyderabad, most people come to Hyderabad for a business related stay, right? So they would want to look at Airbnbs that are closer to a business center. So something like close to Gachibowli or High Tech City. Those are the regions where there's a lot of IT development happening, right? So people would tend to select properties that are closer there, because they'll be thinking about the commute to the office or to the meetings and things like that, right? So that will help with selecting your location. But these are just general guidelines. But yes, if it's like a farmhouse in a place like Hyderabad, it would be towards the outskirts of the city, obviously, because people from Hyderabad would want to use the farmhouse that is outside, right? So they'll go there for to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. So it will definitely be outside the outskirts of the city. So for something like a farmhouse, which is going to be used by the owner or rented out on Airbnb, it would be closer to the outskirts of the city.
Sir, before we choose any site for the Airbnb or a farmhouse, so we will expect a basic requirements, it could be roads or water, or it could be drainage. So according to your experience, what are the basic infrastructure requirements one site should have?
That's a really good question, actually. So the main reason farmhouses mainly don't get used much is the access to the farmhouse itself. So one is the distance, but two is the type of road that is leading to the farmhouse site, right? So if the roads are very bad, right, even if it is 40 kilometers away, and 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers of the distance, the road is really nice, but the last 10 kilometers before you reach it's not so great, then it actually kills your potential of earning in Airbnb also, because that is what they'll be remembering when they step into the farmhouse for taking it up as an Airbnb as well, right? Or even if you're using it for personal use, the last 10 kilometers of the bad stretch mainly becomes your friction to using the space. So that friction itself will make you avoid using the space a lot more. So that is one of the key things that you have to keep in mind. And also, if the road is not great and during the rainy season and things like that, it tends to get a little more mucky. And sometimes there are plots that I've seen where there is no access during rainy season because the car cannot even go through that road because it gets filled with muck basically. So that is one major thing. So water and sewage, most sites that are out on the outskirts, they will not have government water connection or sewage connections, which is something that can be easily kind of rectified by having a septic tank and a soak pit. So that kind of helps with the sewage issue. And we also give a sump, basically an underground sump where you can fill it up with your water tankers, right? If it's like a plotted development, these are things that are already taken care of. But if it's like an isolated site, this is something that we kind of do as part of the taking care of the water and sewage. Electricity is one more important thing. So you'll have to see if there are any electrical lines that are already running close to the site. So you'll have to pay the EB, the local electrical board, to kind of pull a wire from the closest pole to your site. So it's better to have something that is closer, because if it is too far, then they charge you for pulling the new wire towards your plot as well. So that is something to keep in mind. And the last thing is also high tension wires. So if there are high tension wires that are passing through this plot, you cannot build anything below that. So you have to be very careful that to see to that high tension wires are not passing through the plot itself.
Okay. So like you have given very good suggestions for someone who want to choose a site for their Airbnb property. So sir, so finally, after seeing like a basic requirements, so we have finalized the site. Let us assume a client is there. So he said to you his own requirements to you. So like how do you translate the client's vision into architectural concept?
So we generally have a process that we follow. So that does start with the design dialect, which is basically understanding what the requirements of the client are, right? And it is also our duty to educate the client, saying these are things that you can do and these are things that you should avoid doing. So especially in projects like Airbnbs and farmhouses, which are going to be used as Airbnbs, there are a few a few things that would increase your ROI, like basically the amount you spend and the amount of ROI that you get for for two different parts of the farmhouse would be very different, right? Like the experience, for example, if you have a good a different or a unique experience, that would kind of attract a higher ROI than just adding one extra bedroom for the matter, right? Like for example, there are two farmhouses which have 3 bedrooms, which are letting out one farmhouse which is a 3 bedroom with very unique experiences, which are letting out on Airbnb, and there's another farmhouse in the same area but does not have anything unique to it, but it's just it's a 4 bedroom farmhouse, right? So the farmhouse that has a unique experience might actually outperform the farmhouse that has a one extra bedroom, right? So that is something that you have to keep in mind. So those are things that we will guide the client with when in the initial call. So generally our architecture process is divided into broadly 6 parts. The first one is basically the design dialect, which is what this is going to be, right? Where we discuss the requirements and where we also suggest a few things. Then the second part will have your site visit, where most clients generally bring their own sites, right? So they already have a piece of land which they want to develop. So we go see the site, locate all the services and the natural features, the views and things like that, and give them a site analysis and a zoning layout. So where what will come roughly, right? And then the third stage would be the preliminary drawing stage, where we give them the initial furniture layout, and then from there we go on to the different themes that you can do, and from there we develop the 3D for the space. Post that, we'll have all the working drawings and site and all those site execution and things like that, which continue after that, basically. So the initial discussions are what defines how your farmhouse or Airbnb is going to perform.
Sir, in this question only, you have said that you are talking about the rooms. So the number of rooms has to be 3 for a good Airbnb property. If we have to design a new Airbnb property, we have to select these number of rooms, and the property has to be follow this layout, or else this property should have these amenities. So like, how do you determine the number of rooms or amenities or layout for an Airbnb property?
It need not have 3 rooms specifically, right? So depending on the size of the plot and what is happening around the plot, right? So with that is what will determine the number of rooms, or the number of the amenities that we can provide and things like that. And there are rules as well, right? So that you'll have to follow. Like, for example, if it's a farmland, you can't build a huge villa that covers the entire farmland, right? So there are particular, you can only cover a part of the land. So those kind of rules will also suggest how much can be built in that space. So there are restrictions in terms of height, restrictions in terms of the space that you have to leave on all sides of the plot, and restrictions in terms of how much area the building can cover in the plot. So those are some of the guidelines that the government rules itself will pivot towards a particular number of rooms or built up area, basically, right? So that is the initial thing. But over that, yes, depending on what purpose the Airbnb is going to be used for, or the farmhouse is going to be used for, we will suggest the amenities that can be given, the type of architecture that you will be doing. So we basically design properties which are climate responsive and are based out of vernacular principles, right? So for example, we'll orient the building in such a way that it lets in a lot of sunlight, or the cool breeze during the during the different seasons. So that also helps with the comfort inside the property, or inside the building. So these are one of the major criteria that we think of when we start designing. So that kind of gives us a rough idea as to where the bedrooms are coming, where the private spaces and public spaces are going to come, right? So, and we also follow a few of the vernacular principles, like for example, in a place like Hyderabad, or for example, in a place like Vizag, where we've already done a farmhouse, which is more or less towards the Chettinad style. So we've given a courtyard in the middle, which ventilates the heat from the building, right? And there is a veranda that is a shaded veranda that is all around the building, which naturally shades the walls. So during the peak summers, or during the hotter seasons, the wall is naturally shaded by the veranda, so it does not gain so much heat from the direct sunlight. So these are a few things that we add on to the planning stage itself, and kind of see to that the building is kept cooler or comfortable for the use, basically. That also reflects in your electricity bill in the future, because you'll end up using lesser AC, and those kind of and also lighting, because there'll be a lot of natural light, so you'll end up reducing the lighting load as well.
So in the previous questions, you have mentioned that once the site is finalized, you will visit the site, and based on the size of the plot as well as based on the surroundings of that plot, you will come up with the designs. So these days, if you look into electricity bills as well, they are increasing day by day. So if our property has to survive, it should have something like sustainability, like it should be pave cooling or else natural lighting or else water harvesting. So we have to implement some sustainability concepts in our designs. So how do you incorporate sustainability concepts that influence your designs?
Right, nice question. So, basically, rainwater harvesting is, I think, more or less compulsory in most of the regions. So, rainwater harvesting is nothing but when there's like water that is collected on your terrace that you kind of divert it into a soak pit, basically. So that helps in conserving the water that you're not losing the water that is falling on your terrace as well, right? So it recharges the ground. So most properties will have a bore well, right? So from where you're drawing the water, this is a way to give back to the nature. So when it's raining, whatever water is collected in your terraces and balconies, they're all diverted towards the soak pit, which recharges the water source. That's how it is, and most of the governments have made it compulsory to have a rainwater harvesting pit, basically. So that is taken care of. But like you said, passive cooling and natural ventilation, natural lighting, those are concepts that are very important when you want to save something over time, right? Like when you want to save on your electricity bill over time, right? So these are things that might not be might look like an expense in the beginning when you're designing the space or when you're constructing the space, but it pays multifolds when it's done right, basically. The same example that I spoke about earlier, the farmhouse in Vizag, which we had designed with in the Chettinad style, right? So there, what we had done is we had used a few principles like which will help with natural ventilation, natural lighting, and passive cooling, right? So the courtyard space, even though it looks like okay, it's going to let in a lot of heat and light, what happens is when there are windows all around, right? So the air, basically the cool air is comes through the windows and then exits through the courtyard. So there's a continuous circulation of air through the bedrooms and all the other the living room and all that, right? So there is cool air that passes through all the rooms and then ventilates through the courtyard. So that helps with natural ventilation, and it also helps with natural lighting because it kind of lets in the light from the central courtyard, right? So when you look at a Chettinad house, the courtyard is the center of the building, and then you have bedrooms and your private spaces, your public spaces that are around the courtyard. And generally, there is a corridor space or a pathway that runs all around the courtyard as well, which is again shaded, right? So that helps with cutting down the heat into the direct sun hitting the walls of your living room or the private spaces, basically, right? This helps with cooling the space. The natural ventilation itself helps with cooling the space a bit. And we also have, like I said, we have a veranda that runs all around the building, which stops the direct sunlight that hits the wall again. And we've also used terracotta tiles, for example, right? So we've used the sloped roof with terracotta tiles, which cut down the heat compared to, let's say, using a concrete or a cement tile, so that helps with cutting down the heat. And we've also used a few local material, right? So tandoor stone, we've used tandoor stone in the courtyard and other areas, which also helps with reducing the cost or the carbon footprint of the building, right? And also we've used Athangudi tiles, which is specialized tiles that are made in the region of the Chettinad region, in a small place called Athangudi, which also helps with keeping the artisans and the artisans who work on the tile, giving them some revenue as well at the same time.
So, sir, finally, you went to the site and you taken the requirements and you have drawn the plan in a pen and paper. So now you have to transfer that design into digital format. So how important is to show 3D models or walkthrough before starting the construction to the clients?
So yeah, it's a good question. So basically, what happens is we have a vision as to how the building is going to look, or how the spaces are going to feel, right? But then for a client to visualize the same thing or to be on the same page as what we are thinking, we need to show them the 3D model or the 3D views basically to make them understand what we are thinking. And that also is a very critical stage where the clients also give us a lot of inputs, because till then it's all on a 2D scale, right? It's a plan. So we will give them a 2D plan where we tell them, okay, so this is where your main entrance is, this is how you're walking through the house, this is where your living room is, this is where your sofa is, this is where the TV is, and so on and so forth, right? So that's what we would have shown them up to that stage, right? And for most clients, or some clients at least, it's a little difficult to visualize how it's going to look in 3D. So how will they feel when they are going to stand inside that space? So that is what we do with a 3D model. Or when they are standing outside the building and looking at the building, what are they seeing? So that is where we show. That is what we show using a 3D visualization software, or like a 3D view basically. So it's a very important stage, because that's where most of the changes happen, and that's where we also want all the changes to happen, because once we move to the next stage, which would be your working drawings, right? It's a little more difficult to change things, because even a small change will change a lot of an entire set of drawings basically. So we try to tell the client to finalize all their and give us all their inputs during the 3D stage itself.
So, sir, if we take any architecture or else any profession, we basically charge for the services we are providing. As an architect, how do you estimate the budget for the Airbnb while in the designing phase?
Okay, so yes, that is a very important stage that comes after the 3D visualization, right? So what we do is we create something called a BOQ, that is a bill of quantities, right? So that will have everything from the type of cement it'll have the specification of the material, that is like from the type of cement you're using, the grade of steel that you have to use, and things like that, to till the paint finish, the type of paint you will be using or whatever to finish the project, right? So it will have all the materials, all the quantities of all the materials that are required to build the project, right? So that kind of gives you a good idea as to what the budget is going to be, right? So there are two ways normally contractors take up a project. One is a per square feet rate, which is basically a kind of like a lump sum, right? So they would say, for example, if there is they would calculate the floor area, right? Let's say it's a 2000 square feet property. They'll say, okay, my cost for construction is 2000 rupees per square feet, and your property size is 2000 square feet. So 2000 into 2000, that's about 40 lakhs, right? So that would be the cost of your construction. But that being said, there are a lot of things that are not included in this per square feet rate. So, for example, your septic tank, your sump tank, your overhead tanks, all those are not included. So, it's only the area where your slab is, right? If you have, like, let's say, a courtyard space, so that there is no slab there, so they won't have charged for it. Or if there is some kind of extension that is happening, or like a architectural feature, like a architectural fin, or some feature that is not included under the slab, all those will be extra. So that is where most clients get a shock at the end, right? So they would have agreed for 40 lakhs, but at the end of the day, the property cost would have been, like, the construction cost would have gone up to, let's say, 60 or even 80 lakhs, right? It would have doubled by the time they finish. And The per square feet rate also has a few other things like like the cost of material, right? So for example, they'll say, okay, in my 2000 square feet as 2000 rupees a square feet, I will include tiles which are let's say 50 rupees per square feet. But then when you go for selections, you would have selected a tile that is 100 rupees a square feet. So right there, your flooring cost is doubled, basically, right? And in terms of other things also, like they'll say, I'm going to give you a basic paint. You might want something more expensive, or you might want some textured paint. So all that adds up over time. And at the end, you see a bigger bill than that, the basic 40 lakhs that they actually initially told you. So the other type is a unit cost price. The unit cost price, what happens is there will be a BOQ which specifies each and every item, and they quote for each and every item. So for example, let's say you're going to use 10 tons of steel, right? 10 metric tons of steel. So they will charge for, they'll say per ton it is this much, my labor is this much, so overall per ton I'm going to charge you so much. But the drawback in that again is sometimes when you're calculating for the BOQ, there might be some changes, or there might be some changes that we have done after the BOQ has already been released, right? So in those cases, what happens is maybe the tonnage of the steel from 10 tons it has become let's say 12 tons. So you have to pay that 2 tons of extra, basically. So those are a few of the drawbacks on the unit cost price. And the other thing is, every time a person wants to enter a number for a particular item, right? They would want to keep some kind of a margin for it, right? So the building will have multiple items that come in. So every time they're adding a margin, the margin kind of increases over time, basically. So that is another drawback of a unit cost pricing or with the BOQ. What we do is a hybrid system. So we tell them, okay, for the clear slab area, whatever it is, you give us a per square feet rate, and for the rest of the the extensions and other elements that are not included in the per square feet rate, we will give them a separate BOQ for that, where they quote for each item. So that way your cost escalation is a little controlled over time.
So sir, like finally you have done with the designs, and you have done with calculating the budget as well, and now it's time for the construction. So if you look into a typical residential building, so what the owner do is they will come up with their own contractors or their own builders. Sometimes they will give the complete project to you, like you have to bring the contractors, or you have to bring the builders as well. So how do you choose the right builders or contractors for your project?
So that's a very good question, actually. So the thing is, some clients have their own contractors, they come with their own contractors, and we also work with a few contractors from our end, right? So what we do is, when the BOQ is ready, we call a couple of contractors. At least there should at least be 2 or 3 contractors who are quoting for the project, so that we know that if somebody else has made a mistake, or while comparing the BOQs itself, we'll kind of understand where people are charging more and where people are charging less also, right? So the thing is, we normally have a meeting in the office where we call the contractor, we explain all the drawings. So we create a set of drawings called the tender drawings, which are not used for site but for quotation purpose, right? So we explain all the drawings that are there in the tender drawing, then we explain the BOQ, and then we tell them the area for the per square feet rate space as well. And then we ask them, these are the items. If you have any doubts, you can ask us right away and you can give us a quotation, right? So with that, normally what happens is there might be some contractor from the client side, some contractors from our side. We get a set of quotes and compare them and choose the right person, right? So it's not necessary that they have to go with a contractor that we know, or we are more than happy to work with contractors that the clients know and they trust, right? At the end of the day, you have to trust the contractor. That's the most important thing. And they should also be reliable, and the contractor should also be very reliable and very open with what is happening, right? So if there is a delay, they have to tell us that there's going to be a delay because of so and so reason. Or if there's going to be a cost escalation, they can always say, okay, this is something that we missed, or this is something that is new, so we have to kind of it's going to increase the cost by so much. So we like working with people or contractors who who are very genuine and open, and also trustable, basically.
So, sir, like finally, you have finalized a contractor, or else the client has their bring their own contractor or builder to construct the Airbnb property or home. So, like finally, the construction has started, and sometimes you have to go to the site to check the progress of the construction. While the construction is going on, like how do you ensure the quality control and adherence to design during the construction?
What happens is basically we have site visits. So more or less an architecture project would have around 13 site visits over the period at least, right? Depending on the number of slabs that are there. So every time the steel is tied, right? Like before the concreting, we go and check the steel basically. So we check how the spacing is and what have they followed the structural engineer's drawing. So basically there will be a consultant called a structural consultant will be involved in the project, in any project, right? So they are the ones who will give you what the size of the foundation is going to be, what type of steel to use, what is the thickness of the steel, what is the spacing of the steel, and all those kind of criteria, and the grade of the concrete as well, right? So these are things that have to be adhered to, so for this building to be safe, basically, right? So we normally every time before concreting, we go and check the site. We see what this if they followed the structural engineer's drawings or not, and also when the concrete is on site, the contractor is supposed to do a few tests, right? Like a cube test, a slump test, and things like that. And the cube test. Basically, what happens is they set the concrete in a cube shape, right? And then they test it after some time for checking the strength of the concrete. So if that tells us the grade, basically, if it is what the strength is in there are particular parameters for that. So they will check with that, and then they'll tell us, okay, it has achieved 100%, or sometimes it will achieve generally it achieves more than 100% of what it claims, right? Like let's say it's M25 concrete, it'll achieve better results than that generally if you go with a reputed RMC company, that is a ready mix concrete company, right? So those are things that they do. But we have our own site visits, like I said. So during the construction stage, every time they are going to do your concreting, we visit the site. When they start laying the bricks, the first layer of bricks they lay, and then they show us, so that we know all the walls are in the right places, all the door openings are left in the right places. And over the period, we have multiple other visits to check the quality, like if the plastering is done right, where the electrical points are. That is a very important check that we have, basically, right? So have they used the right module of the box? Have they done the piping correctly? And those kind of things we check during your electrical check. Then plumbing, we check if all the position of the plumbing lines are correct, because once it's done and the tiles are done, you can't move the point, right? You can't move the tap, basically, right? So we check during that when the plumbing is done. Then when the tiling is done, also before the tiling starts, we tell them this is where the first tile is supposed to be. So they start laying from that. It'll be there in the drawing, but anyway, we will explain it to them on site, and where we give grooves, where we don't give grooves, those kind of discussions we'll have. So yeah, so we kind of till handover, we'll have multiple other visits.
So, sir, like finally, you have done with the basic construction. Like you have constructed the walls, the slab, and the tiles also has been constructed. Now you have to start with the interior design. So before starting the interior design, we have to choose the materials for interior design. So how do you choose the materials that balance aesthetic appeal, sustainability, as well as cost effective for the interior design?
Yeah, so during the construction itself, when the architecture is being constructed, we would have already started the interior design with the client, right? So what will typically happen is that we'll be presenting a design direction for the interiors as well. So we'll give them a choice of a few or a few options of styles which we can choose, which will match the architecture, right? And with that, we would have already developed a 3D model, and when we are doing the 3D model itself, we kind of show you the type of material that we are going to use. Like, are we going to use like some wooden textures, or are we going to use fabric somewhere? What type of fabric are we going to use? What type of wood shade are we? The shade of wood that we are going to use, right? So that will already be kind of frozen during the 3D visualization stage, and with that we move on to the selections of materials. So again, materials, there are a lot of options, right? Like if for example, I've shown one, let's say there's a wall paneling that is a wooden wall paneling. It has a wood finish on the outside, right? So in that case, you can do that in different ways, right? So the cheapest way or the more economical way to do it would be using a laminate, right? So you can paste a laminate on top, which looks like wood, but it's not real wood. It looks like wood, right? So you can use a laminate. But if the budget is higher, then you can use veneer. Veneer is basically a thin slice of actual wood, right? So you can use that instead. So depending on the budget, we can tweak the material that we are going to use, basically. So the overall vibe of the space would be fixed during the 3D visualization, but the material, you can substitute a few material for something which is more economical, or you can go for something which is more expensive. So that depends on the client's choice.
So sir, like finally you have completed the interior design as well. So the project is almost completed. So you have to do the final inspection before handing to the client. So what do you check in the final inspection before you handed the project to the client?
So the architecture part has a separate snag list. So we call it a snag list. So at the end of the project, before the contractor hands it over to the client, we create a list of items called the snag list, where if there are things that are not up to the mark, or there are things that needs to be changed, we make a list out of that and send it to the contractor and the client, basically, right? So there might be few things like during the architecture stage, or even the interior stage for that matter, like the painting would have been done, and then let's say after painting, somebody has come and installed a light or installed the AC, right? So what happens is, which AC should not be installed in the end, but anyway, if something like that has actually happened, there might be like hand marks, right? Like the person who has fitted it in, their hand marks might be there on the wall. So you might have to do some touch up, right? Paint touch up over there, right? So those kind of things will also be included in that snag list. Like the snag list will have all the details, right? Like maybe there's a laminate which has cracked somewhere that needs the touch up, or there is somewhere there's a paint that has not been painted properly, or the door alignments are not right. Right, like when you're looking at your wardrobe, the gap between the doors there will be a gap between the door because it needs to open, right? But it might not be even, or one door might be hanging towards one direction. So those kind of things also, we kind of make a list with all of those items and tell them that these things have to be catered to, basically. So like if the door is not aligned, it's just a small alignment in the hinge. So it's a 2-minute job, but even that will be included in the snag list. So, and then you normally, when you're checking the plumbing fittings and things like that, you kind of switch on all the water taps, switch on try the flush, things like that, and see if everything is working properly before you hand it over to the client. And mainly the electrical as well, like the switches. So normally we give them the sequence of switch. So let's say there are 8 switches in a board, right? We'll be like, the first switch has to switch on these 2 lights, the second switch has to switch on the fan, right? So even that we check and tell them, okay, the switches are as per sequence, or if it's out of sequence, we'll tell them you have to switch the switches basically, like move the switches around to get the correct sequence. So as in when you as you enter a new room, the first thing that you need to reach out is to the switch, right? You'll switch on the lights in the room first, so that those kind of things are taken care of when with the sequence of the switch itself.
So Gautam sir, thank you so much once again. You have given some of your valuable time, and you have shared the complete process for building Airbnb property from scratch to handover. So thank you so much, sir, once again.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine, Joshua. So it was a very interesting conversation, and I really appreciate the way that you have framed your questions. Basically, it was in sequence, and which is quite commendable actually. So yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation that we had, and hopefully looking forward to having other conversations as well in the future.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Joshua.
So this is all about how to build an Airbnb from scratch. So I hope that you like this podcast. If you like this podcast, make sure you hit the like button, as well as turn on your as well as share this podcast with someone who are building, or who are interested in investing Airbnb properties. And also I will upload this kind of podcast in future. So if you want to be notified, make sure you hit the like button, and also turn on notifications just by hitting that bell icon. So this is your Joshua Kumlakar signing off.